we're going to have a go at a stained glass window using scrap fabrics and embroidery. I've really been into my collages recently. My mum gave me a sample of this paper, this sort of fusible paper that you can use on the back of fabric that makes your fabric sticky. So this I really wanted to try and show you as well, because it could be a bit of a game changer in how I'm putting together my collages, because I hate pins, as I've probably mentioned it. So I think there's two ways we could do this. We could draw our pattern on our fusible paper and then cut out the fabric, iron it on, filling in the gaps, filling in the picture. Or what I think I'm going to do is make a whole rectangle of scrap fabric colours and then cut out the shapes I need from that. So definitely two different ways of working, but I think the second way probably mirrors what I'm already doing, so it kind of would fit me best. There's kind of a smooth side of the paper and a rough side. The rough side is the glue side, and my mum has told me do not get it on your iron because it will ruin your iron. So I'm bearing that in mind. I've looked up some designs, rough designs on the internet of stained glass windows. I think I'm going to do something abstract. So we're going to go with 3 arches in blue, pinks and reds and yellow, and then above the arches some little green windows as well. I've gone mainly with flowers because I'd like to maybe catch the odd flower in part of the windows. As with trying anything new, I'm a little bit hesitant, but we will just give it a go. That's what my channel is kind of about, is just trying things, so we will give it a go. And I've actually got quite a big piece of this special paper, so if this goes wrong I can try again in a different way. Don't know if you can hear, but I've got a cold. Isn't that always the way when you have time off work? You get ill. Very annoying. It's still kind of up on this side, so I think I'll turn it around. And we're just gonna cut out some shapes. Random. Can't have it overlapping too much because then the bits that are overlapping won't get glue on them. Use a little bit of each of my yellows. Might do some long strips. Of course, any parts that aren't quite stuck on will be sewn down later anyway. Got lots of the yellow. And there will be two ways of sewing. You could either draw out sort of a grid so each section is equal and uses straight lines, which would suggest stained glass, or you can also do sort of non-linear, sort of broken up pattern. We will see. So that's roughly a quarter line, so I've got quite a bit to fill in. Started using slightly bigger pieces so it's easier for them to stay in place, I think. So we're going to do sort of pinky red now, because I didn't have a lot of red. And I've actually not got a lot of these colours. So this one might be a little bit repetitive. I've got this very bright red, which I'm going to take a bit of pink out of. Sort of going around the edges to start off, to give me my space that I need to fill in. And this will be sort of trial and error, really. Got a lot of the yellow is overlapping, so some of that will definitely have to be sewn down. Which is fine, because we'll be doing our slow stitching over the top anyway. This is giving me lots of scraps for other projects. So I've laid it all out. I am enjoying how it's looking. I didn't have a lot of greens, so I've used a couple of the other colours, cutting out sort of the blue and yellow bits, and I've used a non-flowery bit there, but hopefully there'll just be a little bit of that showing. I'm going to turn this little iron down. Do I want the steam on? Probably not. There we go. Okay. So sort of 30 seconds to let the glue melt. I can just see tiny little bits showing. I'm going to just start. I feel like I should probably move it onto a heat-proof mat. That might be a good idea. Let's just do a corner and see if it works. And then I will let you know. I think it is working, even just holding it down for a few seconds. I need to cover that a little bit up with some green. Right, I think I'm going to very carefully carry it away and iron it, and then we will see. It's been quite a fiddly process, so if it doesn't work, I'm going to be a little bit miffed. And it feels like more work than just cutting bits and sewing them directly on. Maybe once we've cut it out and I'm then sewing, then it may feel like it was worth it. Let's see. And here is the ironed piece. I missed a tiny bit at the end there. I was ironing really sort of close, keeping an eye out for little bits of movement and little gaps appearing. The yellow ones, where I'd used smaller pieces, by the time I'd got to that, because I was doing this way to this way, a lot of the pieces had moved, and I think my instinct to use sort of larger pieces was probably right. So look, I can turn it upside down, and you can see it's kind of got a papery texture, which is going to allow us to cut out. I don't tend to draw many of my patterns out, I kind of go for it. I think slow stitching, junk journaling, scrap fabric projects kind of sort of lend themselves to that kind of imperfection, if you like. But so what I'm going to do is figure out how tall I want my stained glass windows, cut one out, then use that as a template for the other two, and then with the green ones we'll look at those in place because they're going to go in the top of the arch. So this is going to go in my felt book that I've been making. So I am going to use a dark grey to sort of give a churchy stone kind of colour effect. We're going to sew with black stitching to create the stained glass effect. I just drew a rough shape, folded it in half to try and get it roughly equal both sides. So the top of our panels is only going to be up to here. The panels I think need to go on first, so we're just going to cut across, and also we don't need the green at the moment. So it is quite useful for cutting it because it is stiff like paper now. Good, so I've got a bit of space to play with. Quite a little bit scared now. So let's cut. Red one seems to be a bit bigger than the rest, but that's okay. I do actually want it most of the width of this, even though it's gone a bit red there. Let's take the red off and then take it to a point. I think that looks good. I'm going to actually see before I start stitching if I can leave them this size. It seems a shame to sort of cut them smaller, but it will make sort of a wider angled window. So we have two different ideas here. We have the circle with two other smaller circles. I think because I'm sort of going for the pointed Gothic look and the overall arch isn't going to be round, it's going to be pointy, I think I'm going to go for these shapes, which I'm going to have to try and draw the perfect shape so they're all the same. And they kind of echo the shape of these windows, and they will echo the point as well. And the shape actually seems to be bottom heavy, so a smaller sort of triangle at the top. A kite shape, a little bit more like a kite shape, but with rounded sides. I've actually done more green than I was planning to do. That's alright, I just about had enough. I'm going to peel them off and sew them on. So let's hope they peel off as easily as the other one did. It's good, all the fabric is staying together. I can see why people use this stuff, particularly when you're working with such tiny scraps. I think a lot of the collages I started to do, I use quite big pieces, so I don't feel the need to sort of use this stuff. But this one in particular, I was thinking it's going to be a lot of little bits to hopefully get the effect I want, which is looking good so far. So stitching wise, I'm going to use black thread, probably 3 strands, and around the outside and the larger gaps we'll probably do a couple of rows of stitching together, maybe split stitch or something that's quite chunky. And then we're going to do lines across, which we may just do in single black or just 2 black straight stitches. I'm going to experiment a little bit and do a couple of pieces, and then I will show you one we've got going. Even though it's on a dark background, it's such a lovely light picture. I'm really pleased with the way this is taking shape. I got a little bit distracted in the middle of making the other stained glass window and decided to make a little Easter card. So I've used the end of the stained glass fabric that I made and then put a solid sort of cross in the middle, a little bit of decoration around the outside. As you can see, I've done 1 row of stitching around the edge, so you can see a little bit of the fabric on the other side, which is not how stained glass actually works, but I've used a little bit of creative license there, and I think it looks good. I think I probably prefer it actually a thinner line rather than the thicker lines I'm doing on the other piece. So this is the tidied up Easter card. I've used a hardboard and I've just double-sided and stuck it on there, so that is the easiest way of doing that and really quick, because I was in a bit of a rush, to be honest, because I was meant to be working on the other stained glass window. But I am really pleased with that, and it was just the scrap fabrics from the other project has made a whole new project, something a little bit different. I've kind of gone with higgledy-piggledy stained glass lines, or non-uniform, so it's a kind of modern stained glass window, and I'm really pleased with that one. And now back to the other one. I laid all my pieces out, and I've drawn on where I want the lines to go, so that's a little bit of effort. I think your eye will be drawn to the black line, so I wanted them all to go across in the right, at the right level. I've just started sewing down the middle, and I started with that row of stitching because it's also holding it in place. So I've started the sewing. I'm using 2 strands of split stitch. I think that looks enough. These I'm just going to split into 4 quarters. These 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5, a split of 5. I'm going to see how they look, see if they need more splitting up. I don't think they will. I've taken the top a bit shorter and trimmed the bottom as well, because I'm going to find some grey thread and just do some stitching all the way around to give the impression of the whole of the window, because at the moment they are just sort of floating on a grey background. So there is quite a lot of stitching on this project, even though I've used the glue special paper to sort of put the scrap fabrics together. There's still a lot you can add with some stitching. I found it's not too difficult to stitch through. It is slightly different. You can tell it's slightly papery, so it's a little bit different, but it's not too sticky. It doesn't seem to be making a mess of my needle, and it's not being really hard to stitch through. So sometimes if you're using stick and stitch, you really need a thimble because you're really pushing through, but this has been okay. So next is all horizontal lines, and at the end I need to sew right around each piece. I think that's going to be a little bit tricky because I want it to be right on the edge of the fabric with no fabric sort of showing through. either side, if that makes sense. So I might have to do one right as close to the edge as I can take it, and then do a second row actually on the felt, which I think will be okay if the outside line of the window is thicker than the other pieces. I think in my mind I had thought that the colour would be sort of peeping through, but I like the colour so much it seems a shame to really cover it up with really blocky stitching. I've finished sewing the glass panels and I'm quite happy with that. I don't think it needs extra cutting up. I've started going around the edges. It's a little bit heavy-handed, but I can't sort of get a thinner rows of stitching and cover both the edge of the fabric and go onto the felt. So there's sort of 3 lines of stitching around there. What I have thought since doing it, could keep your piece of scrap fabric on the paper intact, and then put a layer of felt with cutouts on top, so then each panel would be sort of peeping out behind a felt cutout. That would also work well, I think. Perhaps something to try next time, but it is coming together. I'm pretty pleased with it. So the more I've worked with it, the more just slightly bits are coming up, and I tried to catch them in the stitching, but some of them might need a little bit of glue or something just to keep them flat, which is a bit of a shame. But I've done all the outline stitching in black. You get the idea of a window, but I want to bring it a little bit more together. I've got some grey, and I'm just gonna do 1 or maybe 2 lines around the outside just to bring it together a bit more. Here is the final piece. I think you can just about make out the stitching. It is a little bit more obvious, just not on camera. But I've done sort of a stitch around the edge of back stitch just to sort of bring all the windows, all the panes of glass together into one window. I'm really pleased with that overall. I love the coloured panels. It just looks like light shining through a window, so very happy with that. Need to tidy up the back, but as with all my felt squares, they are going to go into a book with another piece of work on the back, so you won't see that.